Right, yeah, how you going there? Today I'm going to be explaining Mimighouls in the context of Master Duel, how to play them, what to use with them, all that stuff. So yeah, let's just get right into it. First up, you got the face of the deck, Mimighoul Master. Mimighoul Master can't be destroyed by battle or card effects while your opponent controls any face down monsters, or if you control a Mimighoul monster other than Mimighoul Master. Once per turn, if Mimighoul Master is normal or special summoned, you can add one Mimighoul monster from your deck to your hand except for a Mimighoul Master. And once per turn, during your opponent's main phase, you can change one face down monster on their field to face up attack or defense position. So, you might be wondering, right? Why on earth would we want to change one of their face down monsters face up attack? After all, then they can activate their effects and all that stuff. Well, that's the thing, right? Because we're going to be giving them bad monsters. Hear me out on this one. Every other main deck Mimighoul monster is a flip monster with a terrible flip effect that can be special summoned from your hand face down to your opponent's field. We can then use card effects like the Mimighoul Master to flip over these Mimighoul monsters on the opponent's field so then their terrible effects can activate. These effects come in two stages. 1. An effect that affects the opponent, and 2. An effect that gives that monster back to you. I'll be explaining these effects from your point of view as the person who's playing Mimighouls. Because these cards are worded in a way that they affect the player who controls them, which will be your opponent, I'll just be explaining the effects in relation to you. Slime, for instance, gives you the option to special summon a Mimighoul monster from your deck to your field. Armor prevents any Mimighoul monsters from being destroyed by battle this turn. Fairy prevents your opponent from activating the effects of monsters special summoned from their hand. Archery lets you draw a card, and then your opponent sends one card from their hand to their graveyard. Dragon destroys all face-up monsters your opponent controls except for Mimighoul monsters. And Cerberus banishes the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, then they have to special summon one of their banished monsters to your side of the field in defense position. After that first effect resolves, they then give you control of the Mimighoul monster that just got flipped up. However, be warned, if you are doing like column shenanigans and zone placements, your opponent does get to choose where that Mimighoul monster gets returned to, so be careful about that. All these monsters also have secondary effects. For example, all of your Mimighoul flip monsters can be special summoned from your hand to your opponent's side of the field face down. This effect can also be used in Slime, Armor, and Fairy to special summon to your field face up, provided the following conditions are met. Your opponent controls more monsters than you, your opponent controls a monster, or you control a Mimighoul monster. Your other Mimighoul monsters have on-summon effects. On normal and special summon, Archery can change one face down monster to face up attack or defense. We've already talked about Master, it can add a Mimighoul monster from deck to hand. Your spells and traps though can be added from deck to hand when Dragon is normal or special summoned. And lastly you got Cerberus, which doesn't actually have an effect on normal or special summon, but while it's face up on the field does prevent your opponent from targeting your spell cards with card effects. So what are these spell cards that we're going to be looking at? Well, first up you got Mimighoul Dungeon. Its first effect is that Mimighoul monsters you control that won't normal or special summon this turn gain attack equal to their original defense, which can be pretty big. Here are the top 5 monsters you can see here that get affected by this. Second effect, once per turn, you can add a Mimighoul monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. This is actually a big deal. Mimighouls search a ton, and I find that during my third turn, I am struggling to find targets within the deck, so being able to search from the graveyard is actually pretty good. However, it does mean that this card is actually affected by Ghost Mail, on top of being affected by Ash Blossom and Dominus Purge. Its final effect is what really sets this deck apart. Any player who controls a face down monster cannot normal summon monsters, nor can they declare an attack with a monster that was special summoned that turn. This effect completely stops Tempai Dragons, which is astounding, but also has implications for other decks. For example, Blue Eyes kinda needs to normal summon so they can start their plays. They can still do other combo lines, but generally speaking they want to normal summon their tuners onto the field. Like we just said, Tempai generally starts with a normal summon, but if they do get monsters on the field and are able to synchro summon, they can't actually attack that turn because those monsters were special summoned that turn. Fluundereeze, they can't play. I mean, I don't think anyone's playing Fluundereeze anymore these days, but this effect is quite amazing when you think about it. However, probably released a few years too late. Ever since Power of the Elements, ever since Tier Element, Yu-Gi-Oh's kind of progressed to a point where we don't actually need a normal summon. You can actually just special summon all day long. In fact, this is one of those decks, you can actually do a pretty decent combo without actually having to touch your normal summon. There's also the fact that when you give your opponent your Mimighoul monsters, they can just flip those monsters up during their turn before they even normal summon. After all, the Mimighoul monsters do have to travel back to your side of the field when they're flipped face up during the main phase. So how do we get around that? We use Mimighoul Room. Special summon a Mimighoul monster from your handed deck to your field face up, or face down defense position to your opponent's side of the field. Then you can change one face up monster in the field to face down defense position. This is huge, right? Because you can't change the monster's power position to turn that summon. So, do your turn, have Dungeon on the field, set this card, pass to your opponent draws their card for turn, activate Mimighoul Room, give them a monster face down. they can't flip that monster face up that turn. They're now locked down with normal summons, and they can't attack that turn with their special summon monsters. Only problem with rumors is that you can only play 3 of them within the deck. You can use cards like Transaction Rollback to, artificially increase the amount of rooms you have, but honestly, if you haven't won the game in 3 of your turns, you're probably going to lose the game. It's got a graveyard effect as well. You can banish this card from your graveyard to target any number of Mimighoul cards you control, return them to the hand. However, you can only use 1 Mimighoul room effect per turn, and only once per turn. So if you do choose to special summon the monster, you can't bounce back your cards on the same turn. Kinda sucky, but that's how these cards work. Just like our next card, Mimighoul Maker. Reveal 2 flip monsters with different names for your deck. One randomly gets put on your opponent's field, the other one gets added to your hand, then you can special summon a Mimighoul monster from your hand. You have to remember, a lot of your Mimighoul cards actually do trigger off special summon. We're looking at Master, we're looking at Dragon, we're looking at Archfiend. Speaking of, Archfiend then can flip over that opponent's monster to then get you back that monster and give your opponent an adverse effect. This card's pretty mandatory within your combos, you will be using it a lot. However, just remember that it does count as 2 summons for Nibiru, so watch out on that front. Second effect, if this card's in your graveyard and your opponent special summons a monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 face down monster your opponent controls, change the face up attack or defense position. Archfiend already does this, Master already does this, this card does it as well. Let's take a brief break to talk about the extra deck. We got Mimighoul Throne. Requires 2 level 1 Mimighoul monsters. You can detach a material from this card to special summon out 1 Mimighoul master from your hand, deck or graveyard. Don't forget, when that master special summon, you can get a search from it. During the main phase, as a quick effect, you can target 1 Mimighoul master you control, equip this card to it as a quit spell that gives that master 1000 attack. Then, you can return cards on the field up to the number of materials this card had when you activate this effect. So, if you use this effect to summon out a master, you only have 1 material on this card, so when you activate the second effect, you'll only be able to bounce 1 card. However, if you didn't use the effect and you normal summon the master or special summoned it out using different means, then you're able to bounce 2 of your opponent's cards. Our next card is Mimighoul Giant, which only requires 2 level 1 monsters. No Mimighouls required. It's got 3 effects. First one is, if this card succeeds summon, you can add 1 Mimighoul card from your deck to your hand. Not just monsters, not just spell traps, any card. This effect is crazy no matter what archetype you're playing. Being able to search for any of your archetypal cards is just a really good effect. You already got dungeon on the field, search yourself a room so you can block your opponent from normal summoning his turn. Got yourself the room but no dungeon, vice versa. Need a monster to normal summon? Grab yourself a master, grab yourself a dragon. This card's just really good. And we really just covered 1 effect. As a passive effect, your non-exceeds Mimighoul monsters can attack directly while your opponent controls the face down monster. Your opponent is just about always going to be controlling face down monsters, especially if you give one to them. And don't forget, your monsters, your Mimighoul monsters, the non-exceeds ones, are going to be boosted by dungeon. We saw the chart earlier, right? You're going to have 3000 on Master, you're going to have 2500 on Dragon. Hell, if Master is even equipped with Throne, then that's a 4000 Master. You've done 6500 damage, you got 15,000 damage left to do. You've almost won game. Or is that really an almost? Because you can detach 1 material from this card, then target face up cards on the field up to the number of face down monsters your opponent controls, and destroy them. And if you do, inflict 1000 damage to your opponent for each card destroyed. If your opponent controls 2 face down monsters and they have 2 face up cards on the field, destroy them, inflict 2k to your opponent. That's 8500 damage, that's game. And if you wait a turn like we saw in that chart, it's going to have 3300 attack, which is a phenomenal amount of attack, especially when you consider that most boss monsters have only 3000 attack. Only problem is Tyrant Dragon. Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon actually has 3400 attack, which means it can attack over Giant. It just causes problems for this deck. Blue Eyes causes problems for this deck somehow. So you're in like a weird battle where you're trying to like stop your opponent from normal summoning with their Blue Eyes so they can get Tyrant Dragon up. Well, if they get Tyrant Dragon, they've won the game. Kinda crazy that one. Let's stop talking about that, let's focus on the rest of the cards. We got Mimighoul Charm. Once per chain during the main phase, if a Mimighoul monster your opponent controls is left face up, you can randomly choose 1 face down card in your opponent's extra deck. And if it's a monster, you can special summon that monster to your field. However, it cannot activate its effects this turn. If you can't special summon it, then you banish that monster instead. Also, you can use this effect twice per turn. Only problem with this card, and the reason why I don't really play it too much, is how your combos are sequenced. First thing you're doing is giving your opponent monsters, the second thing you're doing is flipping those monsters face up. The third thing you're doing is searching your cards. So you won't be able to remove any of your opponent's cards from the extra deck, your turn, unless you have this card in your hand. But you don't want to play too many copies of this card as the effect doesn't stack. You can only use it twice no matter what. It's still pretty powerful, especially in formats where the extra deck's tight. Hell, look at Fiendsmith right now. That's 3 to 6 cards in the extra deck that if you banish or take control of, your opponent won't be able to use. So yeah, in that respect, it's brilliant. You can also play this in conjunction with Kashtira Unicorn to apply more pressure to the opponent's extra deck. Then we got the final card, Mimighoul Fork. Target one face down monster your opponent controls, your opponent then gets to choose one effect. Either change that card to face up attack or defense position, or send that card to the graveyard and then its owner draws 2 cards. So I really have like an issue with cards that give the opponent control as to which effect they get to use. Honestly, I reckon this card's a stinker. If your opponent is clever enough, they'll be able to see which effect you want to activate. If you're running low on cards, then obviously they won't give you the draws. If your combo's been interrupted to a point, then they'll just give you the 2 cards. Who cares at that point, right? This last effect is pretty decent though. You can banish this card from your graveyard and add 1 more Mimighoul Fork for your deck to your hand. However, you can only use each effect once per turn. Honestly, a card that replaces itself every turn is pretty powerful. Look at Primarch Drill Beam. Of course, that card has another effect attached to it that's really good, while this card doesn't. So yeah, that's all the Mimighoul cards. Let's just rank them up. Here are the cards you'll play at 3, here are the cards you can play at 3 to 1, and here are the cards you can play at 1 or 0. So yeah, let's look at the combo, shall we? This combo we're looking at is going to start off with exactly 1 Mimighoul Maker and no normal summon, so let's look at that. First off, Mimighoul Maker, give your opponent a slime, get yourself an Archfiend, and then special summon out the Archfiend. The Archfiend then flips over the slime then gets you special summon out Dragon then gets you Dungeon gets activated, searches out a Fairy. Then you Xyz summon into Giant gets you the Room, special summon out the Fairy. Then Xyz summon into Throne then gets you a Master. And then from there you can set the Room. This provides you with a bounce, your opponent can't normal summon, also they can't attack with special summon monsters. Your opponent also has to deal with one 3,300 attack monster, and one 3,000 to potentially 4,000 attack monster in Master, depending whether or not if you're able to successfully use Throne's effect. Also notice, we haven't actually normal summoned here, so you can still do stuff, and we are not under any locks. So from here you can do other things. Go into a U-Bell combo, a Fiendsmith combo, discard Engraver, grab Tract, bring out Lori. It's just a small combo that you can do before you go into other stuff. So yeah, let's talk about some cards that we can actually play within the deck and support. Got yourself Transaction Rollback. Like we said before, the only problem with Room is the fact that you can only have 3 copies of it. So let's increase that copy with Transaction Rollback. Now you get 6 copies of Room, you're able to control your opponent's summons for a few more turns. Like I said, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! If you haven't won by your 3rd turn, you're probably not winning the game at all. Up next, Book of Moon. Target 1 face up monster on the field, change that to face down defense position. If your opponent flips over one of their cards so they can start normal summoning, you can flip that card back face down. Book of Eclipse. Change all face up monsters on the field face down defense position. However, during the end phase, all those face down monsters get flipped face up, which is bad because the Mimighoul flip effects only work during the main phase. So now if your opponent had any Mimighoul monsters on the side of the field, they're just going to keep having them. You don't get those monsters back, you don't get to use them as extra deck material, they're just there on your opponent's field. And that's before looking at the extra draws your opponent gets. Instead, I'll play Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, which changes as many monsters on the field as possible face down defense position. Then, if either player controls a face up monster, they must send all face up monsters they control to the graveyard. This card's a lot better, just works with the Mimighouls as well. Only problem is, again, if you control a Mimighoul monster, and then that gets flipped face down, you're gonna have to flip it face up again during your main phase, which will then give control of it to your opponent. You also got your permanent setters, Floodgate Trap Hole and Geoda Gravity Ninja. These cards flip monsters face down, but then those monsters cannot change their battle positions. The only way you'll be able to change their battle positions is through a card effect, such as with Archfiend, Master, and Maker. However, if you do this on your opponent's monsters, then your opponent will always have a card face down on the field. The only way they can really get around this is if they tribute set over those monsters, and on the following turn, flip that tributed monster face up. But even then, you're still buying yourself a turn. If that's not your cup of tea, you can use Instant Fusion to get yourself 1,000 Ice Restrict. Its effect says that other monsters on the field cannot change their battle positions or attack. So you give your opponent a Mimighoul monster, get 1,000 Ice Restrict, now your opponent can't flip that monster over. Only problem is Instant Fusion does destroy the monster that it special summoned during the end phase. Instead, I'll recommend using Millennium Ice Restrict. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls or in the graveyard, equip that target to this card, it gains attack and defense equal to that opponent's monster. Monsters that equip monsters' original name can't attack, and their effects on the field and their activated effects are negated. It stops your Ash Blossoms, stops your Ghost Spells. You can also use it as Xyz material as it is a level 1 monster to bring out your Giant Mimighoul. Also got Speedroid Terratop. If you control no monsters, you special summon this card from your hand, and when it's normal special summon, you can add one Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand. Why are we doing this? So we can get Takatomboard. Takatomboard then special summons itself from your hand if you control a wind monster. Use these 2 monsters to special summon into Totem Bird. It's an XC monster that requires 2 level 3 wind monsters as material. Its effect is when a spell trap card is activated, you can detach 2 materials from this card and negate the activation if you do destroy it. Why do we want this? It's just another layer of negation protection. If your opponent uses Imperm to negate one of your monster effects, when you're halfway through a combo, you can use this card to negate the Imperm. But mainly you're using it against Dominus Impulse. Dominus Impulse says when a counter effect is activated that includes the effect to special summons the monster, negate that effect, and if you have a trap card in your graveyard, destroy it. However, if you activate this card from your hand, you cannot activate the effects of light, earth, and wind monsters for the rest of the duel. We are going to be special summoning a bunch of monsters. All your flip effect Mimighouls monsters that can special summon themselves from your hand to your opponent's side of the field can trigger Dominus Impulse. And if that happens, then your opponent can't activate the effects of earth monsters, which is very bad because that's all your Mimighouls monsters. Each one of your level 1 Mimighouls monsters is an earth monster, and if your opponent can't activate earth monster effects, when these cards get flipped face up, they just stay on the opponent's side of the field. It's terrible, it's basically game ending. You can't let Dominus Impulse resolve, which is why we play one Totem Bird. And lastly for support cards, we got ourselves our attack gainers, Clockwork Knight and Terrors in the Hidden City. All face up monsters on the field become machine monsters, doesn't affect you at all. Machine monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, and also machine monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense. Put your giant up to 3800. Also, extra 500 attack on all your monsters means it's easier to attack directly with them, using Giant Mimighoul and dungeon boosted masters and dragons. However, if you're after something a bit stronger, we got Terrors in the Hidden City. Monsters you control that will flip face up while this card was face up on the field gain 1500 attack and defense. Using this introduction with Karma Cannon, you can increase all your monsters by an extra 1500 attack. And unlike Clockwork Knight, you can activate multiple Terrors in the Hidden City per turn. And like Clockwork Knight, the attack gain stacks. So if you have 2 Terrors in the Hidden City on the field, activate Daruma Karma Cannon, then on the following turn, flip over your monsters, all your monsters now have an extra 3000 attack and defense. In case your opponent does try and do something while your opponents are face down, Terrors in the Hidden City also makes sure that your opponent cannot target face down defense position monsters you control with card effects. And let's not forget the Triple Tactics cards, Triple Tactics Thrust and Triple Tactics Talent. Both of these cards can be activated after your opponent activates a monster effect, which is great because that's what Mimighouls do. We give our opponents monsters so we can activate their effects. Thrust can search for any normal spell or trap card, but if your opponent doesn't control a monster, then that card's set and it can't be activated this turn. While Talents is 3 banned cards disguised in a coat. And lastly, we got Terrors of the Overroot. Target one card your opponent controls and one card in their graveyard, send that card on the field to the graveyard, and if you do, set the other card from the graveyard to your opponent's field. This just extends how many turns Dungeon is live. As you're going to be setting a card to your opponent's field on their turn, they won't be able to change that battle position of that monster that turn, thus keeping Dungeon live. Great for artificially extending Dungeon's lifespan without having to recycle room. Up next, some more extra cards, Lyricless and Sun Blue Robin. XC monster requires 2 or more level 1 monsters. If your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, etc. in damage step, you can detach one material from this card, target those special summon monsters, and return them to the hand. Fantastic effect, especially considering your opponent can't normal summon. Just puts extra pressure on your opponent, not being able to summon out their monsters. We also got in Sun Blue Nightingale. Like in Sun Blue Robin, requires 2 or more level 1 monsters. The big thing about this card is that it can attack directly. Then in main phase 2, you can rank it up into Down position, which in turn can be ranked up into Zeus. Now you got yourself a 4 material Zeus, or essentially a Zeus that can activate its effect twice. That being, you detach 2 materials from this card to send all other cards on the field to the graveyard. While it does harm you a bunch because you still kind of want you continue to send field spells on the field, if you play it right, it will harm your opponent more. And Sun Blue Nightingale also has a second effect, where as a quick effect you can detach one material from this card until the end of turn. Lyricless monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, also you take no battle damage. Good for just stalling out for a turn or 2. Up next we got IP Masquerena. It's a Link 2 monster that requires 2 non-linked monsters as material. During your opponent's main phase, you can, as a quick effect, after its effect resolves, link summon 1 link monster using monsters you control, including this card. And a link monster that uses this card as material can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Quick linking is a really decent effect, especially if you go into something like SP Little Knight. It too is a Link 2 monster that requires 2 effect monsters. If this card's link summon using an extra deck monster, you can target 1 card on the field or in either graveyard and banish it. However, your monsters cannot attack directly that turn. When your opponent activates a counter effect, you can, as a quick effect, target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a monster you control, banish both until the end phase. You can also go into Nightmare Unicorn, which is a Link 3 that requires 2 or more monsters with different names. When this card's link summoned, you can discard a card and target 1 card on the field, shuffle into the deck, then if this card was co-linked when this effect was activated, you can draw a card. However, my favourite card to go into would be Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, which is a Link 4 monster that requires 2 monsters special summon from the extra deck. So that'll be an IP Masquerena of 2 of your Mimighouls Xyz monsters. While this link summon cards on the field, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. Also, Their monsters cannot target other monsters for attacks. Don't forget we use IP Masqueraders to summon out this card, so on top of not being able to be targeted by card effects, it also can't be destroyed by them as well. Once per battle during damage calculation, if this card battles a special summon monster, you can make this card gain attack equal to that monster's attack during that damage calculation only. Again, your opponent won't be able to normal summon monsters because you're playing Mimighouls, so the only monsters that will be able to attack are monsters that have been special summoned. And if your opponent does somehow find a way to send this card to a graveyard, you then shuffle one card on the field into the deck. This card just does everything for this deck. A little hard to get out because all its materials have to be monster special summon from the extra deck, but it is possible. And lastly, what decks and energies can we play with Mimighouls? Well, obviously, Fiendsmith. You can play Fiendsmith in anything. Play it in Mimighouls, get a Wave King High Caesar in there, prevent your opponent from special summoning monsters using card effects. Pearly, this actually is a deck. It has been mentioned in the past. Pretty good. You can look into it. Other people have made videos about it. Got yourself Primite. Honestly, I think you can play Primite in any deck as long as you're willing to play like a normal monster. Play something like Thousand Eyes Idol, then you can use the Relinquish stuff. And then play like Relinquish Mimighoul. You can use ninjas to like special summon out Geo, the Gravity Ninja, to permanently flip your opponent's monsters face down. There is some synergies with Yubel. Mimighoul Archery is a Fiend monster. That does fulfill conditions of Gruesome Gravescrummer, which if you control a Fiend monster can quick effect special summon this card from your hand. Then you can destroy a Yubel or one monster mentions it in your monster zone. Gruesome Gravescrummer is also a level 1 monster, so you can use that as material to go into your Giant, or go into any one of your Link monsters. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Mimighouls. What do you reckon? In terms of playability, I reckon it's a pretty easy deck to play. As for in ranked, you'll probably end up in Platinum or Diamond every season. As for how expensive it can be, I don't know. I don't know how expensive they're going to make this deck. I'm making this before they actually release, the information on Mimighouls. Can't really think of anything else I want to talk about, so yeah, that's it. Catches.